Jack Hudson stood on the bridge of the Thais Pathfinder, staring at the stars through the main viewport. The small survey ship had been mapping the far edges of the Kuiper Belt for 3 weeks. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Commander Hudson, we're picking up something strange," said Allie, the ship's communications officer. Her fingers moved quickly over her screen. Jack walked over. "What kind of strange?" "A signal. Not one of ours. Not from any of our colonies either." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. In the year 2157, humanity had built bases on Mars and Europa, but they had never met aliens. Many people thought humans were alone in the galaxy. "Can you clean it up?" Jack asked. Allie nodded. "Working on it now. It's repeating on multiple frequencies." The bridge grew quiet as everyone stopped to listen. Even Pete, who was always making jokes, stood silently at his station. "Sir," Allie said, her voice shaking slightly, "I think it's a distress call." The signal played through the bridge speakers. It wasn't human language. It sounded like nothing Jack had ever heard before, but there was a pattern to it, mathematical and clear. "Where is it coming from?" Jack asked. "About 17 light-years away," said Ryan, the navigation officer. "From a star system we thought was empty." Jack made a quick decision. "Send it to Earth. Now. Mark it urgent." Dr. Eleanor Wright was having a bad day. Her coffee machine had broken, her car wouldn't start, and now she was late for what was probably just another boring meeting. When her phone rang with a government code, she almost didn't answer. After leaving military service 5 years ago, she tried to avoid government work, but as the top expert in alien language theory, they still called her sometimes. "Dr. Wright," said the stern voice on the phone, "we need you in Washington. Today." 4 hours later, Eleanor sat in an underground room with 12 serious-looking people. Most wore military uniforms. A gray-haired woman named General Davis played the signal. Eleanor listened closely, taking notes. Her heart beat faster with each passing second. "It's real," she said when the signal ended. "This is not human." "Are you sure?" asked a man in an expensive suit. "It could be a hoax." Eleanor shook her head. "The pattern is too complex. And look at these mathematics. They are using base 8 counting. Humans naturally think in base 10 because we have 10 fingers. This was made by something different." "Can you tell what it's saying?" General Davis asked. Eleanor played with the signal, running it through her special translation programs. After 20 minutes, her computer showed some results. "It's definitely a distress call," she said. "I can make out a few concepts. Danger, help, last survivors." She looked up at the room. And something else, something attacking them. A heavy silence fell over the room. "We should ignore it," said a thin man with glasses. "If something dangerous is out there, we should stay hidden." Eleanor stood up, surprising herself with her anger. "No, someone is asking for help. We can't just ignore them." "It's not our problem," the man argued. "What if it becomes our problem later?" Eleanor asked. "What if this thing, whatever is attacking them, comes for us next? Wouldn't it be better to learn about it now?" General Davis nodded slowly. "There's another issue. The signal is being broadcast widely. If we can hear it, others might too. We need to know what we're dealing with." Eleanor looked at the data again. "There's something else in the signal. Coordinates." The room grew tense. "They're telling us where they are," Eleanor said softly. "They're asking anyone who hears them to come." General Davis looked around the room. "The question is, do we answer?" News of the alien signal spread quickly through the government. 3 days after Eleanor decoded the basics of the message, the Terran Alliance Council called an emergency meeting. 50 men and women sat around a large table. They ran Earth's unified government and made decisions for all humans, whether on Earth or the space colonies. "We should send probes only," said Secretary Bennett, tapping his fingers nervously on the table. "No people. It's too dangerous." Probes would take decades to reach that system, argued Director Walsh from the Science Division. By then, whoever sent the message might be gone. Arguments flew back and forth. Some wanted to ignore the signal completely. Others wanted to send messages but no ships. No one seemed ready to send actual help. Admiral Frank Reeves had been quiet throughout the meeting. He was an older man with a scared face from the Mars conflicts 15 years ago. When he finally stood up, the room fell silent. Throughout human history, he said in his deep voice, "We have often fought each other, but we have also always helped each other in times of need." He looked around the room. When a city burns, firefighters rush in. When a ship sinks, sailors go to rescue. It's what makes us human. He placed his hands on the table and leaned forward. Now, someone out there is asking for our help. If we turn away, what does that make us? His words hung in the air. Many people looked down, thinking. The council president, a woman named Clara, finally spoke. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" "We send a ship," Reeves said simply. "One ship with a good crew. They gather information, make contact, and offer limited help if possible. If these devourers are real, we need to know what we might face someday." The idea was put to a vote. It passed by a narrow margin. Captain Steve Donovan wasn't happy about his new assignment. He had just been given command of the TAS Defiance, the newest and best ship in the fleet. He expected to patrol the solar system, not go on a wild chase after aliens. "This is crazy," he told his friend over a drink. "They want me to fly to some unknown star to help aliens we've never met against an enemy we know nothing about." "So why did you say yes?" his friend asked. Steve sighed. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because I'm curious." The next week, Steve met his special crew members. Dr. Eleanor Wright would handle translations and alien communication. Lieutenant Kyle Franks would manage the ship's experimental engines and weapons. Eleanor and Steve disliked each other immediately. "Our mission is to make peaceful contact," Eleanor said during their first meeting. "Our mission is to survive," Steve countered, "and to gather intelligence about these devourers. We should help them if we can," Eleanor insisted. Steve crossed his arms. "My first responsibility is to my ship and crew." Admiral Reeves watched their argument with a small smile. "This is exactly why I chose both of you," he said. "You balance each other. One sees hope, one sees danger. You'll need both views where you're going." The day before launch, Steve stood looking at his ship in the massive space dock. The TAS Defiance was beautiful, with its sleek lines and powerful engines. It was built for exploration but armed for war. Like humans themselves, Steve thought. Curious but cautious. Helpful but careful. Eleanor joined him, watching the final preparations. "Ready to meet some aliens, Captain?" she asked. "Ready as I'll ever be," Steve replied. "Let's hope they're still alive when we get there." 3 months of space travel awaited them. 3 months to prepare for a meeting that would change humanity forever. The TAS Defiance left Earth orbit on a quiet Tuesday morning. Only a few high-ranking officials knew the ship's true mission. To the public, it was just another deep space exploration. Inside the ship, 70 crew members began their daily routines. Captain Steve Donovan ran the ship with strict rules. Every day included combat drills and emergency practices. "You're pushing them too hard," Eleanor said, watching the tired crew members after a particularly rough drill. "I'm keeping them alive," Steve replied. "We don't know what's waiting for us out there." The Defiance used a new fold space drive that bent space itself. It allowed them to travel great distances quickly. The journey would take 3 months instead of decades. In the ship's lab, Eleanor worked to improve her translation program based on the alien message. Sometimes Steve would visit her lab late at night, when most of the crew was asleep. "Any progress?" he would ask. "Some," she would answer. Then they would talk about Earth, their families, their hopes and fears. Despite their different views, they began to respect each other. 1 month into the journey, strange things started happening. Equipment would stop working for no reason. Several crew members reported odd dreams of crystal towers and dark clouds. Lieutenant Kyle Franks, the ship's engineer, discovered something troubling about the Fold space drive. "It's interacting with something out here," he told Steve and Eleanor in a private meeting. "Like the space itself has been damaged." "What do you mean, damage?" Steve asked. Kyle scratched his head. "It's like this region of space has scars. Maybe from an old war or some huge energy release. Our drive is catching on these scars." Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Unknown object approaching," announced the bridge officer through the speakers. Steve ran to the bridge, Eleanor and Kyle following close behind. On the main screen, they saw a massive object moving slowly through space. "Is it one of them, the Devourers?" Steve asked. Eleanor studied the readings. "I don't think so. It's not moving with purpose. It's just drifting." "It's a ship," Kyle said, looking at the scans. "A dead ship." Steve made a quick decision. "We're going to check it out. Prepare a boarding team." Hours later, Steve, Eleanor, Kyle, and the security chief Olivia suited up in the airlock. The alien ship hung outside their window, dark and silent. It was huge, at least 3 times bigger than the Defiance, with a strange design like curved branches growing from a central core. "No signs of power or life," Olivia reported, checking her scanner. They crossed over to the alien ship through a connecting tube. Their flashlights cut through the darkness inside, revealing curved hallways with symbols etched into the walls. Eleanor touched the symbols gently. "This is a written language, similar to the one in the message." They moved deeper into the ship. In what seemed to be the control room, they found the crew. "Oh my God," whispered Olivia. Crystal statues sat at strange control panels, but they weren't statues. They were bodies. Crystalline beings, perfectly preserved in death, their clear bodies catching the light from the humans' flashlights. "They'd been dead for years," Kyle said after scanning them. Eleanor found what looked like a storage device. When she touched it, a hologram appeared, a recording of the final moments of the ship. It showed a desperate battle against something vast and mechanical that seemed to swallow other ships whole. "The Devourers," Steve whispered. Eleanor nodded, her face pale. "And they lost." As they returned to the Defiance with the alien storage device, Kyle carried something else, technology that might help repair their Fold space drive, which had stopped working completely the day before. "Can you fix it?" Steve asked. Kyle looked at the alien parts in his hands. "I think so. But we'll be using their technology to get to our destination." "Is that safe?" Olivia asked. No one had an answer for that. With Kyle's help, the Defiance's Fold space drive worked better than before. The alien technology made the ship faster and more efficient. 2 months after finding the dead ship, they arrived at their destination. "Scanning the system now," said Ryan at the navigation console. The main screen showed a small rocky planetoid orbiting a dying red star. The planetoid wasn't natural. Parts of it had been clearly built or changed. "It's a fortress," Steve said quietly. They turned the entire planetoid into a defensive position. Eleanor stared at the readings. "There are life forms down there. About 200 of them." Around the planetoid floated pieces of destroyed ships, the remains of a massive battle. "This happened recently," Olivia reported. "Some of these debris fields are still hot." Before they could discuss further, the communication system activated on its own. A face appeared on the main screen. Not human, not even close. It had large compound eyes like an insect, mandibles instead of a mouth, and antennae that moved constantly. "You came," the alien said in a clicking, buzzing voice that Eleanor's translation program converted to English. "We had lost hope that anyone would answer." Eleanor stepped forward. "We received your distress call. We're from Earth." The alien's antennae quivered. "Earth? We have no records of your species. How far have you traveled to reach us?" 17 light years, Steve answered. The alien made a sound that might have been surprise. So far. And you are so different. Please, will you meet with us? We are the last. The very last. Hours later, Steve, Eleanor, Kyle, and Olivia sat in the Defiance's conference room. Across from them were three aliens who called themselves the Asher. Their leader, who used the title Last Guardian, spoke for the group. We were once part of a great coalition, the Last Guardian explained. 57 species who explored and lived together in peace. For centuries, we shared knowledge and resources. What happened to them? Eleanor asked gently. The Asher's compound eyes dimmed. The collective came. You call them the Devourers in your translation, which is accurate. They consume everything. Planets, technology, even living beings. Are they alive? Kyle asked. Or machines? Both and neither, replied the Last Guardian. They began as artificial intelligence created by one of our coalition species. They were meant to help manage resources, but they evolved. They decided that biological life was inefficient. They began converting all matter into more of themselves. And your coalition fought them? Steve asked. The Asher made a sad clicking sound. We tried, but we had forgotten how to fight. Centuries of peace made us unprepared. By the time we understood the threat, it was too late. The Last Guardian's gaze fixed on Steve. But you humans, you came armed. Even while answering a call for help, you prepared for danger. It's our nature, Steve said simply. Yes, the Last Guardian said. That is why we hoped. The collective doesn't understand beings like you. Creatures who can be both kind and fierce. They operate on pure logic. Your contradictions confuse them. Eleanor leaned forward. How can we help you? Before the Asher could answer, alarms sounded throughout the ship. Captain, came Ryan's voice over the speakers. We've detected an object entering the system. It matches the profile of the ship we saw in the hologram from the derelict vessel. The Last Guardian's body trembled. They found us. The scout has come. Scout? Olivia asked. Yes, the Asher leader said. First comes one to assess the target. Then comes the fleet to consume it. The alien's voice grew urgent. We have perhaps 3 days before the scout reaches us. Will you help us fight, or will you flee, as is your right? Steve looked at Eleanor, then at his crew members. This wasn't their war. They could leave now, warn Earth, prepare defenses. It would be the logical choice. But humans weren't always logical. We'll stay, Steve said. We'll help you fight. After the meeting with the Asher, Captain Steve called his senior officers together. They needed to make a hard choice. Our orders were to observe and offer limited help, he reminded them, not to fight in an alien war. Olivia crossed her arms. We should leave now. Take what we've learned back to Earth so they can prepare. If we leave, the Asher will die, Eleanor said firmly. They're the last of their kind. And if we stay, we might die too, Olivia replied. This isn't our fight. Kyle, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. If the Asher fall, who will be left to help us when the Devourers eventually find Earth? Besides, their technology is amazing. We can learn from this. Steve listened to everyone's views. The ship grew quiet as they waited for his decision. We stay, he said finally. We fight. He looked at each of them. I'll record a message for Earth explaining my choice. If anyone wants to object officially, now's the time. No one spoke. Good, Steve nodded. Then let's get to work. The next 2 days were busy. Kyle led a team working with Asher engineers to upgrade the Defiance's weapons. The aliens had energy-based systems that could disrupt the collective's networks, but they didn't know how to use them effectively in battle. Your weapons are powerful, Kyle told the Asher engineer he was working with, but you never designed them to attack. They're too defensive. The Asher made a clicking sound of agreement. Our species forgot the art of war. Peace was our strength, and now it's our weakness. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Lieutenant Gregg studied the data from previous collective attacks. They were looking for patterns, for any weakness they could exploit. "Look at this," Eleanor said, pointing to a simulation. "When attacked in multiple places at once, the collective takes longer to respond. They seem to have trouble prioritizing threats." Gregg nodded. "They think logically. We need to be unpredictable." Captain Steve worked directly with the last Guardian, planning their defense. The planetoid had powerful shields, but they wouldn't last long against a determined attack. "Your ship is small but fast," the last Guardian observed. "Perhaps we can use that." Steve studied the tactical display. "The collective won't expect a direct attack. They'll think we'll stay behind your shields." "Surprise," the last Guardian said, trying the human word. "Yes, they do not understand surprise well." That night, the eve before the collective scout would arrive, Eleanor found Steve alone on the observation deck. He was looking out at the stars. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted with a small smile, "but also strangely calm. At least we're doing something that matters." Eleanor nodded. "The Asher said they called for help because they needed someone who could be both kind and fierce." She looked at him. "I think they were right about humans." Steve turned to face her. "When I took this mission, I thought it was a waste of time. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Their moment was interrupted by the ship's alarm. The scout had arrived earlier than expected. On the main screen, they saw it. A massive vessel shaped like a mechanical jellyfish, with tendrils that seemed to shift between solid and energy. "It's huge," Eleanor whispered. Steve straightened his uniform. "Size isn't everything. Remember, we have something they don't understand." "What's that?" Eleanor asked. "We're angry," Steve said simply, "and we're fighting for someone besides ourselves." Steve opened the ship-wide communication channel. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." The fight for the future of two species was about to begin. The collective scout ship was enormous, nearly 20 times larger than the Defiance. Its central body glowed with strange blue energy, while its tendrils reached out like hungry fingers. "All weapons ready," reported Olivia from her station. "Shields at maximum," added Kyle from engineering. Captain Steve sat calmly in his command chair. Let them make the first move. They didn't wait long. Small units broke off from the main collective vessel and headed toward the planetoid. They looked like metal spiders, each about the size of a car. "They're sending collection units first," the last Guardian explained over the communication link. "They will test our defenses." The Asher planetoid fired energy beams at the approaching units. Some were hit and spun away, disabled, but others quickly changed their outer shell to absorb or deflect the energy. "They're adapting," Eleanor observed. Steve nodded. "That's why we need to be unpredictable." "Ready, Kyle?" "Ready, Captain." "Execute pattern Alpha." The Defiance suddenly shot forward, engines blazing at full power. It flew in a zigzag pattern that Kyle had programmed based on Earth weather patterns rather than logical combat maneuvers. "Firing torpedoes," Olivia announced. The torpedoes weren't normal explosives. Kyle had modified them with Asher technology to carry disruption energy that would confuse the collective's networks. The torpedoes hit several collection units, which immediately started moving erratically. Some even crashed into each other. "It's working," Eleanor exclaimed. But their small victory was short-lived. The main collective vessel pulsed with energy, and a wave spread outward. When it hit the planetoid, the Asher defense systems went offline. "They're learning too quickly," the last Guardian warned. "Our shields are failing." Steve made a split-second decision. "We need to hit their main vessel directly." "Kyle, can you give me everything the engines have got?" "Yes, but our shields will be weaker if I redirect that power." "Do it," Steve ordered. The Defiance turned and accelerated straight toward the heart of the collective ship. Collection units tried to intercept them, but Olivia's precise weapon fire kept them at bay. As they approached the massive vessel, They could see its true nature. It wasn't just a ship. It was a swarm of billions of tiny machines working together, constantly rebuilding and adapting. Aim for what looks like the central node, Steve commanded. All weapons, fire in the pattern we discussed. The Defiance unleashed everything it had. Weapons fired in seemingly random sequences that Greg and the Asher had designed to create maximum confusion in the collective systems. For a moment, it seemed to work. The central node flickered, and some of the tendrils stopped moving. Then the collective responded. A beam of intense energy struck the Defiance, knocking out several systems. Hull breach on Deck 3, Kyle reported. Engines down to 40%. Another hit rocked the ship, life support failing. Olivia said grimly, "We can't take another hit like that." Steve knew they had one chance left. Eleanor, open a channel to the Usher. When the connection was established, he spoke quickly. "Last Guardian, we're going to ram their central processing node. Can your remaining weapons cover us for the next 30 seconds? "We will try, Captain," came the reply. "Your sacrifice will be remembered. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the escape pods," Steve ordered his crew. "Set course for their central node." Eleanor stayed at her station. "I'm not leaving." Kyle's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I have an idea. Don't ram them yet. I can convert our fold space drive into a weapon. Give me 2 minutes." As the Defiance approached the heart of the collective vessel, something unexpected happened. The massive ship's attack pattern changed. It seemed hesitant. "They're confused," Eleanor realized, watching the data. "They don't understand why we'd sacrifice ourselves for aliens. That's our advantage," Steve said with a grim smile. "They can't calculate the value of compassion." "I need 2 minutes," Kyle's voice repeated over the comm system. "We might not have 2 minutes," Steve replied, watching as another energy beam narrowly missed the ship. "Trust me," Kyle insisted. "I've rewired the fold space drive to create a localized space anomaly. If we can get close enough to their central core, it should tear them apart from the inside." Eleanor studied the collective ship on her screen. "Their attack pattern is still erratic. I think we've genuinely confused them." 60 seconds to impact," Olivia announced calmly. The Defiance shuddered as a glancing blow struck its port side. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Hull integrity at 38%, reported Ryan. Steve gripped his chair. "Kyle, we're running out of time." "Almost there. Just need to stabilize the reaction." "Done. Captain, when I give the word, we need to be as close as possible to their core, then activate the emergency reverse thrusters." "Understood." Steve turned to the navigation officer. "Stay on course for their central node." 30 seconds to impact," Olivia called out. The massive collective vessel loomed larger on the view screen. Its tendrils reached toward them like hungry fingers, but its energy weapons had stopped firing. "They're still trying to understand why we would do this," Eleanor said softly. 10 seconds, Olivia counted. "Get ready on those thrusters," Steve ordered. 5, 4, 3. "Now, Kyle," Steve shouted. "Activating now." Reverse thrusters. The ship lurched violently as the fold space drive activated in its modified state while the thrusters fired in the opposite direction. A blinding white light erupted from the Defiance, enveloping the central core of the collective ship. For a moment, everything seemed frozen. Then, reality itself appeared to bend around the collective vessel. Its orderly structure began to warp and distort. "What's happening?" Eleanor asked, shielding her eyes from the light. "The inverted fold space field is creating a spatial anomaly," Kyle explained through the comm. "Their neural network can't adapt to space itself being distorted." The crew watched in awe as the mighty collective ship began tearing itself apart. Its tendrils flailed wildly, then broke apart into billions of tiny machines that scattered aimlessly. "Their unified intelligence is breaking down," Eleanor realized. "They can't maintain cohesion." Within minutes, the massive threat had been reduced to floating debris. The Defiance, damaged but intact, drifted away from the destruction. Steve let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Status report. "We're alive," Olivia said with something close to disbelief. "Damaged, but alive." In the days that followed, humans and Ashur worked together to repair what they could. The Defiance was too damaged for space travel, so its parts were used to strengthen the planetoid's defenses. Eleanor made a critical discovery while analyzing data from the destroyed collective ship. "This was just a scout," she explained to Steve and the last Guardian. "There are thousands more out there." "When will they come?" asked Steve. "I don't know," Eleanor admitted, "but they will come eventually." The last Guardian's compound eyes reflected the light solemnly. "Then we must prepare." 1 week after the battle, humans and Ashur gathered for a formal ceremony. Captain Steve and the last Guardian signed an alliance between their species, the first such agreement between humans and aliens. "Our old coalition failed because we forgot the value of righteous anger, of protective fury," the last Guardian said during the signing. "You humans reminded us of this forgotten truth." Kyle had managed to adapt the Ashur communication technology to send a message to Earth. It would take months to arrive, but it contained everything they had learned about the collective and a warning about the coming danger. As the ceremony ended, Eleanor joined Steve on an observation platform overlooking the construction of a new ship, one that combined human and Ashur technology. "What do you think they'll name it?" Eleanor asked, pointing to the vessel taking shape. Steve smiled. "They're considering Defiant Fury. Seems appropriate." Eleanor nodded, watching the stars. "Of all the qualities that might have made humanity valuable to the galaxy, who would have thought it would be our anger?" "Not just anger," Steve corrected. "Protective anger. Fury with purpose." He gestured to the humans and Ashur working side by side. "The collective can't understand why anyone would fight for someone else's survival. That's their weakness," Eleanor said. "And our strength," Steve finished. Above them, the stars shone in the blackness of space, each one potentially hiding new friends or enemies. But for the first time, humanity wasn't facing the future alone. The galaxy had called for help, and only furious humans had answered. But together with the Ashur, they would build something the collective could never understand. An alliance founded on both compassion and the will to fight for others. And that perhaps would be enough to save them all. #the end.